Awesome. It looks like we're live.
Super. Let's do this.
Cool. Let's wait a couple seconds for people to come in. I think we'll start at 10:01.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. I think we can kick it off. Awesome. So this is our first LinkedIn Live for Platter. We're here with Saptarshi Nash, the co-founder of Airboxr. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use data to build a high-converting DTC website, or more specifically, how to pull reports relevant to your Shopify store that will help you feel like you're on top of your CRO efforts.
Thank you for having me, Elliot.
Awesome. Yeah, let's kick it off.
Quick background to what we'll be talking about today. Especially, we'll be talking about using data to design high-converting DTC websites. Some of my examples today are going to be from Shopify, but even if you're not in Shopify, you can do a lot of these things yourself just by simply downloading the data off of your e-commerce platform. So this is what we'll be talking about today. First, we'll talk about which pages do we focus on, right? There could be, as an e-commerce website, you probably have hundreds, maybe thousands of pages. But which pages do you focus on to build to increase your conversions? We'll talk about that. Next, we'll talk about once you've decided which pages to focus on, how do you know which products to feature? And finally, we'll talk about how do you design the right copy for your audience. We'll talk a little bit about what kind of audience first, and then talk about how do you design the right copy.
Sabs, before we jump in, how would you say people approach this today?
That's a good point. And I mean, of course, you've worked with a lot more people on the conversion side of things, so I'd love to hear what you say, what you have to say. What I've seen generally is most of the traffic goes into the homepage, and instead of looking at data, there's this popular phrase. I'm not 100% sure if I'm getting this right, but most of the times the opinion of the highest paid person determines which page all the traffic goes to. Sometimes it's the head of marketing, sometimes it's a founder, but there's not much data that goes into determining this today. What have you seen, Elliot?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question just because I feel like every brand has a different approach to pulling this data, which is fine. I'm not saying that there has to be one single way to do it, but does that mean that there's a lot of brands that are perhaps doing this completely incorrect, or worse off not doing this at all?
I think a lot of folks are actually doing this. Whether they're doing it's, in my opinion, it's a lot better to actually do this and get it wrong rather than not do this at all. Even if it is, the founder's opinion, who he or she feels that, hey, this needs to go into to this landing page or this category page. Let them do it. Then let them look at how the numbers are trending over time, right? And see if they're improving, going down. Run those experiments. It's okay. If you don't have enough data to play with, sure, someone was doing maybe $100,000 a year. They don't have enough data to play with, which is perfectly fine. If you don't have enough data, then let's go and experiment and start with a hypothesis that, hey, we should be sending traffic to X page, and if it works, fine. If it doesn't, move on to the next page.
Got it. Yeah, I just had to clear that out before we started because I do think that there's no right way to do this or single right way to do this, but there's definitely a lot of wrong ways to approach this. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
True. I do want to quickly introduce myself. I am a SaaS founder now, obviously, because Airboxr is a company we started as a product we launched early last year. We now have a few hundred users, a few hundred brands using us. Before this, I used to be a direct-to-consumer entrepreneur myself. Took my last company to about 8 figures. It was a e-commerce company. Instead of selling new products. We used to work with large retailers to help them liquidate their inventory, and I worked a lot on the brand and marketplace side. I also used to be a VC for a short period, and I was a management consultant working on big data studies at Gartner when I started out.
Which order was that? Like, when were you a management consultant?
Yeah, I started out my career in management consulting. That was my first. Then I was a DTC entrepreneur. Then for a short period, I was a VC, and now I'm a SaaS founder.
It makes sense with like being super data oriented. Yeah, hi, to introduce myself. I'm Elliot Rosen. I'm the director of growth at Platter. In a nutshell, what Platter does is we help brands build high converting storefronts in a fraction of the time for a fraction of the cost. So our main thesis is that it shouldn't cost you an arm and leg and 8 months to build a world-class storefront. You should be able to do it fairly quickly and at most size brands. So whether you're doing 1 million, 10 million, 50 million, you should be able to build a world-class store. Our second thesis is around the fact that most e-commerce SaaS products, we believe, are features, not a full-blown product. So you shouldn't be paying for them like that. So we've built over 40 different functionalities directly into our theme and app product. So you're able to get most of the functionalities without the really high OpEx and confusion that you get from working with 10 to 15 different apps.
I love that. I love that thesis. One of our core principles, and it maps to the first thing that you mentioned, one of our core principles is that, business people need to look at data, but they are not data analysts. They shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. All the things that I'm going to talk about today, as well as data in general, somebody somewhere has done this before. Just like you're talking about conversion, right? Somebody somewhere has built an amazing conversion tool, a high converting website before. So why should everyone else not learn from that process? It should be available to everyone else. So when someone works with Platter, for example, you've seen best practices across hundreds of different stores, maybe thousands of different stores. No reason why you can't bring best practice from one store into another when they start working with you, right? So very similar concept to us. We work with 10, 20, $30 million brands to identify the data that they need to make very specific decisions. Then we automate it so that brands who are at 3, 5, $10 million don't need to learn from scratch. They can simply click a button, get the same analysis that someone with 10x their size, someone who's 10x their size and has a data team is spending a week to do. In your case, you don't need to do that. You click a single button, you get the same analysis.
Awesome. Super aligned on that.
So let's very quickly talk about the first thing. And I know, Elliot, this is in your wheelhouse completely. How do you determine what kind of pages to start with? I know you eventually build the entire website, but is there a certain thing that you look at when you're starting out with a fresh new client? What do you look at? Where do you start from?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that selfishly, in my past, I did a lot of like paid media and growth work for brands. So in my brain, I was always sending to either landing pages or product pages. I feel like brands spend so much time optimizing and thinking about their homepage just because they keep searching for their brand, landing on their homepage and getting mad about it. I do fully understand that a homepage is super valuable, especially as you're growing your brand and people are new to brand and search for it and land there. But at the end of the day, like your product page is closest to the bottom of the funnel. So I usually start with product pages and landing pages and then kind of work outwards from that. So after that, I would go to collection pages just because I think that's where discoverability and shopping, quote unquote, really happens, especially for brands that have a pretty large catalog. If you have a completely busted collection structure or navigation or menu or something like that, people can't buy if they can't find a product that interests them or solves the problem that they're looking for. And usually when I have all of those built together or sort of the bottom of funnel and middle of funnels situated, that's when I'll go and start working on pages like the product page or other content pages that help with kind of the conversion process.
So true. That reminds me of when I was running my previous DTC brand. Initially, I think like everyone else, I wasn't very special, but initially I try and send all of my traffic into the homepage because I thought that has got everything on it. But that is actually the wrong choice, because everything on it means that it doesn't speak to everyone, right? So it doesn't speak to the audience that you're trying to attract. The landing pages, on the other hand, I think are very, very incredibly valuable. And I don't think people, even the category pages, I don't think people pay as much attention to that as they should be. Of course, someone who's already coming to you to do that already realizes the need that we should be doing better landing pages, but I don't think a lot of folks are actually doing it very well. Interestingly, for me, from a micro tidbit perspective, we noticed that in my previous company, we noticed that our sales on Tuesdays were terrible, like hilariously terrible. It would go down by 10x. So we basically decided to create this concept of a Typhoon Tuesday sale. And basically all we did was, we didn't even have time to set up ads for it, because it's such a time bound thing, just one day of the week, right? So you can't wait 7 days for you to optimize those ads. So we sent out emails on Monday, and people would turn up on Tuesday for the sale. We did this for about 4, 5, 6 weeks, and after that we stopped emailing. People would still turn up on Tuesday for a sale. So that eventually became our highest converting page with zero marketing dollars. That said, I wish I had more data like this when I was doing this, but I suggest a slightly more data-oriented way to determine which pages you should be focusing on. Quite interestingly, this information is already there on Google Analytics, so everybody has Google Analytics, so not a problem at all. What I've done here is we've pulled the trends in landing pages, the sessions, users, conversion rates, bounce rates, total purchases, and more importantly, the revenue and the conversion rate for every single page, and looking at how they move over time. So over time, if you see a certain landing page, which can be a collection, it can also be a product page, that gives you higher revenue and is also converting at a higher than usual percentage. Focus your attention on that. I make sure that the pages with the highest revenue are also getting enough sessions to justify that, to make the most of that opportunity. And also look at those which are getting highest conversion rates. Are they getting enough sessions or not? It's okay if conversion rate drops by 1 percentage point, but if you're getting more sessions for that page, you will make up for it with revenue.
How often do you think brands should be pulling this type of report, or is it kind of dependent on factors like your size or how much traffic you have, how much you're spending on marketing, what your marketing channels, etc.?
Right. I'd say focus, do this every time you run a major sale, because when you run a major sale, obviously you're going to send a lot of fresh new sessions to a certain landing page. Then go back after the sale and look at what the revenue and conversion rate for that looked like. If you ran an ad to that page, obviously the revenue is going to look good, but the conversion rate might be drastically different from another sale that you ran before on another landing page where, let's say, the conversion rates were better. So do like-for-like comparisons. Compare a landing page where you are sending paid traffic to another landing page where you are sending paid traffic. Don't compare a page two pages, one of which is getting paid traffic, another one which is getting only organic traffic. That's not a fair comparison.
It's also funny to me because I feel like for a lot of brands, Google Analytics is just this nightmare, especially with the update to
GA4.
And if you go into, let's say it's like a conversion analysis or a traffic analysis, there's just so many data points. And it's funny because this report is really only 12 data points or 12 columns.
Yeah, columns, correct.
That's really all you need to start understanding which pages you should be sending traffic to or not. So I wonder, and we'll never get this data because it involves a little bit of transparency and vulnerability, but what percentage of brands just have no idea what to do here because they're overwhelmed with the amount of data that they have to analyze to figure it out?
Exactly. And that's a good point. I think back about 10, 15 years ago, the problem used to be that there isn't enough data. And now the problem is that there's too much data. I can't make sense of it, right? And therefore, I think it's important to always start with the hypothesis or start with the decision you're trying to make, and then look at what data is going to help you make that decision. Every one of our reports ties back behind the scenes to a decision that needs to get made. And therefore, we don't overwhelm people with, oh, here are 50 metrics you can look at. You can look at 50 metrics, but maybe you want to look at 8, because that's going to help you make the decision.
Got it.
So quickly, one thing that I wanted to, and okay, I'm going to ask you another question, Elliot. Now that let's say now we know what kind of landing pages to focus on, right? How do you determine what products to feature on that? Today, do you have any guidance on, especially from the design perspective, on what kind of products do you put on above the fold, what goes below the fold, where do you put the buy buttons, things like that?
I'm going to cheat and say it depends. I guess what first comes to mind for me is like, what is the brand's catalog look like? Is this like a single product brand, which makes this a really easy answer? Is it one of those brands that has like a hero product and then a number of like, let's say accessories or like parallel products that are sold to that? Or is it a brand that has a very large catalog, which naturally like it just becomes Pareto, where a handful of products are doing 80% of all the sales and there's 20% of the products that are there, still valuable, still feature them in case people want to go buy them. But in reality, there's that 80% that is doing the lion's share of the sales, or 20% that is doing 80%. So I'm not going to answer your question, but I'd be curious to see how you would approach it for a brand that you know nothing about, but you could pull their data and quickly tell you which ones you should feature.
Yep. And this is usually a part of the strategy review we do with most of our clients when we get them on board, is how do we determine which products are doing well, which products need more assistance. And my advice is to start with looking at sell-through rates for each of your product. Now, what does sell-through rate mean? Sell-through rate basically means if you have 100 products, then at the end of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, what percentage of those products have you sold? And that will be the 30 days, 60 day, 90-day sell-through rate. And what that basically means is that products that have a high STR, a high sell-through rate, are products that are more likely to sell if you keep them at the top of your high converting landing pages, right? Also, remember to look at the daily average number of products being sold, because you do not want to run out of your best-selling products when you're running a sale, right? And one of the things I've seen with a few of our few users, and not everyone obviously, is that they don't intuitively know which is their hot-selling product or product that is selling behind the scenes, because maybe it's in page 8 in their collections pages, but people are actually searching for it, searching for it by using the search box, getting to it and making a purchase, which means that the sell-through rate for those products could actually be pretty high. Now, sometimes the sell-through rate of low-margin products can be high as well, right? Maybe you mispriced it. Maybe you're selling it at a lower price than you should be, and that increased the sell-through rate. So it is a balancing act. Either if you're profitably selling those products, definitely put the high sell-through rate products at the top of your pages, feature them prominently. Sometimes you might want to bundle low sell-through rate products with high sell-through rate products to make sure that you're not getting stuck with those low STR products.
I have perhaps a silly question, but your data background and as a management consultant, you can probably talk me through. So typically I would think a brand, specifically one that is not super data oriented or maybe new to pulling these kind of reports or kind of green to e-commerce in general. I feel like they would look at just the product with the highest aggregate number of quantities sold. How is that really different to sell-through rate? And why do you think that sell-through rate is a better metric to determine which product is quote unquote better to feature there?
Right. Very good point. Very good question. And this is very similar to whether looking at overall sales versus conversion rates, right? Think of sell-through rate as the conversion rate for a product sale. If you're it could be very possible that the product that you're selling doesn't actually have a high AOV, a high selling price, and therefore the total revenue from that product might not be that high. But if the sell-through rate is high, you could potentially use that product to bundle together and sell something else together. Or at least you can use it to get traffic into your page, or use it in your ads, because traditionally people who have come to that page tend to buy that product more. So a combination of all of that. I don't know if I answered your question, but the right way to think about this is really that whether you look at revenue versus sell-through rate is the same as clicks versus conversions.
I really like that. I like the soundbite that I'm going to take is that your sell-through rate is kind of like the conversion rate for your product.
Correct. And one last point, yes, this is actually slightly more complex to pull this information. It's not very easily, it's not usually Shopify data for this specific case is not structured very in an easy way that you can pull. But to do this analysis, what you can do is pull the sales numbers from Shopify into one sheet, pull the current inventory levels from another sheet, combine them together to calculate this number. Another way, of course, is just by doing it using Airboxr. It's a single click. Shopify, the last I checked, Shopify does provide you the overall sell-through rate for all of your products together. That is also obviously very helpful, but not something that will help you make decisions like this about which product to feature on ads or feature on your landing pages. I do want to talk a little bit about bundling, but before I talk about my data approach to bundling, Elliot, I want to hear more about how you look at bundling. And I know bundling is actually a core part of Platter's value proposition as well. So how do you guys generally look at bundling?
Yeah, I would say we really focus on building features that help you drive up AOV. A lot of that has to do with cross-selling and upselling, but one of the key tactics towards increasing AOV is bundling. And I think we split it into two different ways. One is like just traditional digital bundles. So these are creating bundles in Shopify as you would create any regular product or listing. The second is kind of offering build your own bundle options to customers. So I think if you put those together, you're kind of increasing the surface area of number of bundles that you're offering to your customers. I think the question for both of them is, especially if you have a pretty large catalog, is like what products should you bundle together?
Exactly. And I think the second part is what I'm going to deep dive on. What products do you bundle together? There, of course, there's a lot of apps that help you automatically create bundles. But in my opinion, a lot of apps do not tell you how or why they decided to bundle two products together. Now, that black box approach does not help you make a decision for the future. And that's why we suggest doing this through an analysis called market basket analysis. It's a statistical way of saying that, hey, product A and product B should go together, right? But if I pair up product B, create pairs of product A and product B together, which one or two pairs should I be focusing on? So let me give you this example. This is an output from a market basket analysis. The way to read this is this, that, hey, product A and product B are purchased together 62% of the times. So if two products are already being purchased together by your existing customers, then you should probably be bundling them together. But that's not enough. Let's look at the next number, 34%. What this says is if product A is purchased, what this says is for every time product A is purchased, product B is also purchased 34% of the times. So we have a second number to say that, hey, these two products should be going together, but that's not enough. What this number 3.2 tells us, this metric is called lift. What this tells us is that when product A is added to the cart, the likelihood of the customer purchasing product B goes up by 3.2x. Now we know that these two products do belong together. And in our estimates, what we do is we also add this additional number that says what is the order value increase in AOV you might get if you bundle these two products together. In this case, it's 127% increase in AOV.
There's some construction in the background. I don't know if you can hear the I'll talk over it. So is there like a threshold that you're looking for lift where it's like below this, it's not really worth it, or above it, it's kind of like you're silly not to?
Yeah, I'd say it depends on the user's own, on the brand's own numbers. Like in this case, 3.2 in my fake example, the difference between 3.2 and 5.72 is quite high. But if you look at column C, the support value of 8.2% is really not that much, so probably not worth bothering with, right? For another company, another product, for another brand whose AOV is probably, say, $400, I'm making it up, but let's say $400, for them, even an 8% of overlap might mean a lot of money compared to someone else who's selling $25 worth of products. So I'd say, sorry to steal this again, but it depends. It does. It probably just need to look at your own numbers for the same single brand and determine what numbers work best for you. Personally, I feel like if there's a 10% overlap in support, you're good enough to give it a shot.
And are any of these columns calculated? Because I've seen this report before in Shopify. Does it come with all of these columns, or are these also being calculated after they're pulled?
Yeah, in our case, we are calculating them after we pull the data. So what we do is we pull the raw sales data for each cart, and then look at what two products made up that cart, and then calculate the C, D, E columns from there.
Got it. I think a theme that keeps popping up for me is everyone loves data. I think that's true. Decision making is made easier. No one likes to build reports. No one likes
Absolutely not.
No one likes to organize or clean up. And I think despite the usefulness of that data and how it unlocks everything you should be doing moving forward, I think people still hesitate to do it just because they hate pulling reports so much.
Exactly. And a $50 million brand might have a data science team and a data analyst team working for them whose sole job is to pull these numbers. But you can't expect everyone else to have the same kind of support to do this. And there's no reason why a $3, $5, $10 million brand can't do the same thing without hiring an entire data science team to build first. Before I go on to the next, though, I want to hear, Elliot, your thoughts on copy. I know you guys are the pure experts on this. I'll talk a little bit about the data, but I want to hear what is your approach to, once you've decided this is the landing page we're going to start with, or we're going to focus on, these are the products we're going to feature. How do you get around to the copy itself?
Well, I think the background on me is I've always been like a copywriting junkie. Both in my e-commerce background, but also for SaaS, because I feel like people really focus on the visuals or the design aspect of the page and how it drives the conversion, but they think that the words they matter, but they're not super important. What's funny though, is that if you remove the words from a page, no one's going to convert. So rarely anyone is going to convert. I doubt that you could design a page or a landing page that works. However, if you remove all of the visuals and you just have really, really good copy, I've seen that convert all the time, whether it's plain text emails or kind of like old school sales landing pages that are very copy heavy. However, when it comes to like testing a page and conversion rate optimization, I feel like copy usually falls to the wayside, or it's like front loaded. People test the headline, the description, some details here and there. They find something that they're okay with and it's focused for the next years on moving design elements here and there, changing creative and stuff like that. And I think what it comes down to is a lot of these platforms or methodologies that people use to do simple experimentation don't really have a way to determine or pull data on whether copy A is beating copy B or not. So I think once again, it comes down to people aren't pulling the reports. However, if they had the data in front of them, I think they would totally make the changes necessary to like improve copy.
True. And is there a certain starting point you recommend to marketing teams who are trying to do this for the first time?
I would say like what's the touch point that we're talking about? Like, is it copywriting in ads? Is it copywriting on a landing page, and kind of move after that? I really like the idea from, I think Google's terminology is to follow the scent. So if you have a search ad or a visual ad and it has a particular angle, let's say it's talking to teenage sports players or new moms or something like that. You don't want the ad, which draws them in and drives the click, to lead to a page that doesn't follow the scent or smell like that original ad. But I think all too often people get good at that advertising testing side where they have lots of different angles, but their landing pages or pages that they're sending to don't really reflect that copy.
Correct. And I have I hope you have a strong opinion on this. What do you think about using AI to design the copy for your landing pages?
My honest opinion,
Absolutely.
without going into big of a rant on like how I view AI and marketing it today. This isn't like, maybe things will be different in a month. Maybe Apple figures out how to give a training data set that completely improves this. But I think AI as it currently stands with copywriting is it does the illusion of doing good work, but just because it can produce work. I don't think it necessarily has all of the elements that make good copywriting. So good copywriting isn't just, good grammar. It doesn't necessarily even have to be good grammar. I know a lot of people send really high converting content that has typos or is written in a very familiar way or informally. So unless you're able to really, really work with AI to like inject all of those human elements that actually drive conversion, so things like emotion or triggers or really in-depth knowledge of your consumer or your product or the problem that you're solving, I don't really see it to be super helpful. That's a side tangent. What I'm saying, the amount of effort it's going to take you to work with AI to get the copy that you really need, it's 10 times longer than just sitting down and writing the copy yourself.
Exactly. And a lot of the times, no matter how much you want to, feed, how much data you want to feed into the AI, it truly never replaces your marketing person's knowledge, right? And there's a lot happening in their minds that you just can't possibly have on a prompt or documentation to push it into the AI. But again, like I said, things are changing every week, every month, so we don't know what's going to look like, 6 months from now. But given where it stands today, you're right. We should probably, own this ourselves. I quickly want to talk about one specific aspect of copywriting is that understanding who you are talking to, right? And different ads might be targeted at different people, but you might find a certain type of people who are resonating with your ads. In certain cases, it's very straightforward. Like if you're targeting older women over the age of 50, of course, all your copywriting is going to be like that. But for instance, if you have a more generic fashion line, it could be very popular with teenagers. It could be popular with 30-year-olds. But how do you know, right? One of the things I suggest is when you run social ads, split down all of your metrics or most of your conversion metrics by age. In this example, what I've done is we've looked at add to cart to purchase percentages, impression to add to cart, and basically conversion at each stage of the buying process for people coming through Facebook ads. This example is from Facebook ads, but you can do this for most other ad channels as well. Then look at what the cost per landing page view is going to be, what the cost per add to cart is, and what eventually the cost per purchase is. I don't know if you can see it, but up here, there's also the CTR and the CPCs in general. CTR and CPCs matter, but not as much as cost per purchase. Eventually, that's where the conversion is, purchase. So look at the cost per purchase across different ages and look at which age group are you resonating the most with. or which group is your ad plus landing page combination resonating the most with. If it's teenager, your website copy should reflect their way of talking. It should be more reflective of that age group rather than 45 to 54 year olds. Again, this is something that gives you a sort of a hint on how to write your copy, but not so much on what the copy itself should be. Which, Elliot, is my question to you. What do you think, in your experience, what kind of copy do you think do you see work better? Crisp, short, to the point content versus storytelling. What works best in e-commerce?
I'll answer this in two parts. The first one is people who speak in absolutes on this topic really drive me up the wall. So people will kind of tell you that it has to be short, has to be to the point, has to be simple, can't use big words, etc.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in that. I think generally, yes, very short, clear, to the point copy does, I would wager, a lot of the times perform better than drawn out copy. But I think if you had like a chart and you had the cost of the good and the amount of consideration that goes into it, the higher the cost and the consideration, the more copy required to push someone over. I'll give you an example. So if you're sending a landing page for like a tiny gadget, a fidget spinner or something, and you have all this content showing that it's fun and the copy is really like short and to the point and persuasive, that's one thing. But imagine you're trying to sell a $900 course, or maybe it's a $2,000 watch from a brand that you've never heard of or something like that. I'm making up examples on the spot, but like those are going to require more copy, and possibly copy that is a little bit more sophisticated. So it's not really quippy and short, because otherwise someone's going to bounce. That's my take on it. So people who speak in absolutes and say that it has to be short to the point, this is universally going to work better, I don't believe in that.
Yeah. The wildest thing I've seen, and this is from a really successful entrepreneur who runs, based out of Singapore. I don't have his OK, so I'm not sharing his brand name, but they target older people above the age of 55, I think, and you should see their landing pages. It's one massive wall of text, which ends in a video. No buy button until then. Okay, you have to watch 10 minutes of the video before the buy button pops up. And people, so this is for the first purchase. After that, they get the buy button when they come back, without reading through all of this. And they do. The last I heard, I think they do like $50 to $80 million a year just serving that clientele. They're on Shopify, but from the front end, it doesn't look anything like Shopify. It doesn't look like it's going to be high converting web page. But people in that demographic are okay, or they rather find it more trustworthy because you're not trying to sell them up front. This is my hypothesis. I don't know why it works, but it works. They probably find it more trustworthy. They want to learn more about it, but don't want to read through. Therefore, they watch the video. They probably go through the entire video, then click the buy button to go and make the purchase. And I think they also, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think they also have a subscription model after that, so that users don't need to come back and go through this entire process moving on. But these are some wild things that you would think no way in hell is going to work, but for a specific demographic, as long as you understand the demographic really well, it does work.
And the answer there is that you have to test it to get the right data. So this is the type of exercise that you would do to figure that out.
Exactly. What's anything about copy that you feel strongly about that we haven't talked about today, Elliot?
Yeah. So I think if I was to talk about, like, I really like static ads for Facebook accounts, especially for e-commerce. So I know that everyone wants to talk about UGC and video, and there's a ton of place for all of those. But I'm of the belief that direct response marketing is a lot closer to an infomercial than it's a award-winning advertisement. So it's less about like storytelling per se, and more like show me the product, describe the problem, explain why I need it as quickly as possible. And static ads for me work really well for that because you're able to use a mixture between visuals and copy. So when I'm entering a new ad account, I'm trying to ideate new ads. I will think of like headlines and benefit callouts, and a lot of it's copy that is overlaid over the visual of the product. And if you're talking about angles, and for those of you who don't have an advertising background, I think of angles as answering a question like, why would somebody buy this? And if the product is, I don't know, this bubbly water, you can come up with a lot of angles. It's not just about hydration. It could be that this is really good for athletes because it has electrolytes in it. That's a completely different angle, and the copy and headline and everything that's going to be included is different. So when I'm in the testing stage for a brand, I might come up with 5 angles and 10 variations per angle. Very quickly, you can see how that's like 50 different pieces of ad that is running. How would I use a report like this to kind of understand which one of those angles broadly is working best, B, which individual example within that angle is working best, and then form how I would build a page afterwards.
That's a very good point. And since you talked about ads, I know in landing pages you still have a lot of space to deep dive into, explain things to people. Use maybe some images, some videos, and such. How do you think that translates into social channels where the sale itself happens on the channel, like TikTok Shop, for example? You don't have as much space to talk about your product. So what do you think from a copy perspective do people need to know when focusing on that?
It's a good question. So I think with a lot of these, not just TikTok shops, but like Meta shops and stuff like that, I think they lend themselves to products that are easy to storytell with content. So let's take the TikTok example. In order to do well on TikTok, you have to be kind of like seeding a lot of influencers or creating content around it. That's how you're kind of feeding the algorithm information about that particular product. So I think less about copy in that situation as I do like the content that we're building around it. It is a really good question, though.
Yeah, good point. I mean, if you have a video, then sure that you basically put that copy into the video, and hope it translates very well in video.
Or maybe the script. Maybe use that copy to inform kind of the scripts that you're using to work with influencers with.
Correct. Good point. One quick example I wanted to share. So similar to what you're saying on the screen now, when it comes to video, we have a report that breaks down every video into how many seconds of this video did somebody watch, right? What it's usually called hold rates and hook rates. Like hook rate says, did they watch the early beginning of the video? Hold rate is, did they watch right till the end? One of our brands, a CPG brand, what they do a lot of video content. It's about food, and food lends itself well to amazing videos. And one thing they realized was that there was a lot of people were watching right till the end, but they were not converting into paying customers. They were not actually making any purchase, but everybody was watching all the videos. So one of the things I realized after actually going ahead and talking to a few of their customers, and this is not about data at all. Our data told them that, hey, this is where you have a problem. But to find the solution, they had to talk to their users. And what they found was they do this ready mixes that you can use to cook certain kinds of dishes. And turns out they focused so much on the dishes that they didn't communicate the fact that it is literally so easy to make, that someone who has never cooked before could also make whatever dish that they were trying to promote. And then they found that the pushback or the doubt that folks had was, hey, this looks amazing. I'm sure a chef can make it, but maybe it's not for me because I don't know how to cook at all. So they basically added I think 4 more seconds to those videos. They didn't worry anymore about how long the video was because people were watching right till the end. So they added a small section saying, hey, and you know what? Someone like me who has a busy schedule, never been to the kitchen, can also make this in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever the number is. And then conversions went through the roof. So in certain cases, it's, in that case, the copy was literally what goes into the video. And thankfully, I didn't need to worry about, how long the video was going to be because the data told them that people are already watching 100% of your video. When you need to worry with 3 seconds more.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you started talking, if I could edit my answer from before, is I guess I would use copy data when it comes to the TikTok videos or non-static content where the copy is an overlay, come up with hooks.
Yeah.
I feel like copy testing is a pretty easy way to figure out which hooks resonate, and not saying that all static hooks will translate to video and vice versa. But I think it's a good data-backed way, instead of guessing, to take what's been working with you in another way, take the data and see if you can spin it up into new ad formats.
Exactly. What you just said about static ads basically applies here as well, right? The hook is a video hook, somebody saying something instead of the text above the fold. Okay. Finally, I think by now most of you are thinking, I don't have the time to create these reports. What's the point in showing me all these screenshots, right? Thankfully, that's what Airboxr does. All of the reports that I showed you so far today, all you need to do is click something like a run button here. And behind the scenes, we will pull data from Shopify, ad channels, email channels, Google Analytics, run all the analysis, standardize all the data. If it's a statistical analysis we need to run, we run it on our end, and then we deliver all the data into a Google spreadsheet. Why Google spreadsheet? Because we know all the data is going to end up in a spreadsheet somewhere anyway. And we don't want you to change the way your business works just to adopt a new tool. We can fit into whatever tools you are already on. For now, that is Google Spreadsheets. We will add other channels as well later. So things like ROAS reports, LTV reports, CAC reports, conversion rates, all kinds of statistical modeling. I showed you today a product bundling exercise. We also have similar reports for identifying your most valuable customers, predicting spend behavior. And all of this magic happens inside of your spreadsheet. So you're not actually changing the way you currently work. Here are some examples of other reports we have. We have 120 single-click reports spread across marketing, finance, merchandising, operations, even logistics. So things you can do with it include doing a cohort analysis or measuring your product sales over time, and looking at fees from your Amazon store even, or one of our more popular reports is identifying if you are spending money profitably when you do your ads, when you spend on ads. A lot of the focus has moved over the last year from just talking about ROAS, return on ad spend, which looks at revenue, to profit on ad spend, which looks at profitable sales. Are there any trends, Elliot, you have seen in more recent days around what clients are coming to you asking about when you're talking about designing a fresh website? What are the more popular, for example, you have your own apps, plus you also, I'm guessing your clients also install their own apps. What are some more popular areas of focus you've seen recently?
It's a good question. I think when we say a high converting storefront, usually you have a lot of functionality built into it, and you're a fairly sophisticated and high growth brand. So what you want to do is kind of figure out which elements of your store are driving growth. So I'll give you an example. Let's break down some AOV functionality. The first one might be buy box upsells and cross sells. So if you're on your product page, right below the buy button, when you have like a variant selector, quantity selector, price, etc., you might have a button where you can one-click add products to your cart. Versus you might also, once you add a product to your cart and your cart slides out, you might have in-cart upsells and cross-sells. So someone can also, with one click, add to their product there. Even then, maybe in your checkout, you have cross-sells and upsells as well. Now, if I was a brand operator, all of those might be working, which is great, and driving a higher AOV. But I might want to step back and say which one of these functionalities is actually driving a lot of that performance. So there are a couple ways to do this. You can get software that tracks kind of like at the feature level what the performance is. You can do session recording and kind of like see if people are using something or if they're not. But it would be cool to pull data on that and understand like, oh, this growth in AOV is actually being driven by this particular feature.
Good point. And do your clients usually come to you with that in mind? I need to increase my AOV, or are there any other specific metrics you feel like they're very focused on?
I think AOV is a starting point. I think as like as e-commerce is getting more sophisticated, people are more concerned with like lifetime value. And I want to move towards a point where we're talking a lot about revenue per visit. Because if those are growing, you can really understand a couple of things. One, your store performance. Two, whether a lot of your AOV efforts are paying off, regardless of which one it is. Maybe it's the sum of all of them. And like you can also tell things about like traffic quality. Because if you're improving your traffic quality through better advertising and better marketing, you're also improving your storefront. You're going to see that RPV metric increase. I think this is not an issue. It's just a fact that brands are at a different level of sophistication, and that's totally okay. For some brands, it's just, are we growing? Are we driving more money this month than we were that month at a more efficient level? Are we creating more profit? That's totally fine. On the other end, there might be a brand that is, very large and very sophisticated that wants to get into the granularity. And I don't think, just between me and you and everyone on this call, I think that there are examples of very large brands that aren't as quote unquote sophisticated, and there's smaller brands that are incredibly on top of their data and using that to drive growth. So that was a convoluted answer to your question. I think the answer is like more reports that can help me find this granularity, the better.
To make sense. That last thing you said reminds me of one of our bigger clients who has monthly orders in the lower thousands, and then one of our another company that we work with, which is more in the $5 to $7 million range, they get thousands of orders every day. So from a conversion measurement perspective, they have a lot more data than the bigger brand. Now, whether I hate to repeat this again, but you started it. I'm saying it depends when you look at what kind of revenue per visit can I get, because it depends a lot on not just their ads themselves, but also on the AOV of the product, what product they're purchasing, what frequency they're being purchased at. So I imagine there's some element of again benchmarking against their own numbers from past months and see if they're trending upward, if the revenue per visit is increasing, decreasing, or staying the same, right?
I have a question for you. As someone who's been on, I guess, like the consultant side, so being very on top of business intelligence, whether it's e-commerce or not, as someone who's been on the VC side, who is very laser focused on these like financial performance metrics, being a D2C operator yourself, and now being on the SaaS side, what would you say are like your top 3 reports that if you have 120 of these things, and I don't doubt that like they're all valuable for their own purpose, but what are the 3 that you should be running no matter what?
Good point. I think reports are only as good as the decisions you're going to make with that data. So there are certain reports which I think of which are very, very simply reporting oriented. Like I need to look at this data every day, but they're pretty straightforward numbers. For example, the most popular report we have is basically ROAS analysis over time, right? What's my ROAS going to look like over time? Which is more of a health thing. You should look at it every day, and therefore there's no reason not to have that as a report. Then once you have that out of the way, I'd also look at product sales reports, where you're looking at trends in product sales over time. So what products are selling the most? Is the sale of a certain product going up, down, or staying static? At what price are you selling those products? So a product sales trends mapped to the discount sales on the same product, right? It's possible that certain products only sell when you're discounting them. Then maybe it means that there's some mismatch you need to fix behind the scenes. The other thing I look at is more to do with customer segmentation. For example, one of the things that we look at is finding the customers who have purchased a specific product or specific set of products, then looking for hints around what is common between them. Right? For example, if a certain product sells a lot in a certain region, let's look at the actual list of people who purchased that product. Then is there something common among them? Like, are they a certain age? Did they all find us through a certain channel? What kind of campaigns did we run for those people? So that's, again, a lot of this depends on what areas are you focused on, what kind of decisions you're trying to make. But I would say start with the basics of ROAS, maybe profit on ad spend. Then next, look at sales trends of your products. And finally, look at your customer data to figure out commonalities that you can feed back into your ad channels or ad copy or ad targeting.
There you have it. And like I said before, I think everyone values these kind of things. And I think the only reason that they're not implemented in most brands is that people simply just hate to pull reports, hate to sit and manipulate data. They want the data in front of them so they can make decisions. And Airboxr is kind of like the premier solution for you in e-commerce to go from that angry, grumpy, I don't want to sit in front of an Excel sheet all day feeling, to getting to a point where you have all the data in front of you to make educated decisions. So if you want to start a 14-day free trial, head to airboxr.com. That's Boxer with an R, no E. There's also a link in the comments if you want to click that and go there. At Platter, we'd love to see you at platter.co. Feel free to read it up about our product. You can also book a free audit or a meeting with us directly, and we'd love to talk to you about how to build a high converting storefront without the headache, high price tag, or 8-month timeline. So thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you, Saptarshi, for the awesome presentation, and looking forward to connecting with you all after this.
Thank you for having me, Elliot. Have a good day ahead. Bye.